Well, first of all, I think those are two really great questions. I think jazz is not getting as recognized because I was telling someone the other day, jazz I think is in a really huge identity crisis, right? So I think right now jazz is trying to figure out what does it want, and the reason why I can't figure out what it wants is because it's basically in a position where it doesn't know what goals it has, right? So with it not knowing what goals it has, it's trying to figure out like, okay, who am I, right? So in one regard, jazz musicians want to, be famous, right? They all want to have the same kind of success that, whoever the latest pop star is. So what they're doing is they're playing some of the same songs and they're trying to dress the same way. And so, that's one vantage point. Another vantage point is, they want to sort of be disconnected from the past, where I think jazz has been in a real sort of identity crisis because some of the greatest musicians who created this music, we're getting further and further away from them, which happens with anything. It's like as a kid, when you're younger, you listen to everything your parents have to say, and when you get older, you don't really want to, hear what they have to say, and then you get much older, and you realize, then you get much older, and you're like, wow, mom and dad were right. So I think we're in that place where we're trying to figure out who and what we really are. So I think that's one of the big problems. And then the other thing, I think that with jazz education, it's great, but I think we make it too difficult. I think, the goal of any jazz student should really be, I want to make the music feel good, because honestly, that's what all the greats did. You look at, John Coltrane, Miles Davis, or Charlie Parker, when you put on their records, you don't think about, oh man, they played a fifth above, a pentatonic scale. What you think about is, I've never heard a sound like that, and I've never felt the way that this record makes me feel. And that's what brings us to this music. And so to me, to sort of finish your question, or my answer of it, is I think we got to get back to that. We got to get back to attracting people to the sound of it, and then the feeling that they get, and then they'll want to learn more about it when they are attracted to the sound and the feeling. And that to me is what we've lost. I don't think that's the case, because who composed music more difficult than aspects of John Coltrane or Oliver Nelson or so many great artists, Abdullah Ibrahim. A lot of these guys, to me back then, they were composing things so ahead of their time.
True, but what I mean maybe is more difficult to listen to, because they were difficult but enjoyable.
What I will tell you is I don't think it's more difficult to listen to, but what makes it difficult is the attention span has changed, right? So for instance, back then, when someone heard Thelonious Monk for the first time, first of all, there was not a YouTube clip that we could check. There was not, we couldn't go to a CD store and get, 5 different versions of his tunes. One record came out, and that was it. And you listened to that one record until his next record came out. So a lot of the issue now, I really think, isn't so much the ability to not listen, it's that we don't have a big attention span, and it's too easy for us now. We really, I think, are in a place where we're overexposed to music and to everything. Because right now, we get it too quickly. Like when I first started learning jazz, if I didn't go to the library or the CD store to buy CDs, I wouldn't have the music in my home. Whereas in before, or now, I can go onto Pandora and Spotify and all these, media components. With a click, there's a tune available. We could leave here today and say whoever, some famous drummer, and on my cell phone, I can Google that person and hear them in a minute. That didn't happen, So I think overexposure and the lack of a real attention span. Yeah, I think you have to make time for it. So like for instance, I produce records a lot, and one of the things that I have to do when I decide to take on an artist, or even once the record is almost done, I have to set aside time. I have to turn the computer off, move the cell phone into another room, either get headphones or speakers, whatever I choose, and I have to isolate time to focus on that, and that to me is much more difficult now than ever, because my cell phone isn't just ringing. I have text messages coming in. When text messages aren't coming in, I have Facebook messages. When that's not coming in, I have Twitter messages. When that's not linked, so a cell phone now has 6, 7 different message components, right? So to me, my advice would be make time to do and study whatever it is you want to study, and don't budge. So, say I'm going to take 30 minutes and and I'm gonna listen to this Philly Joe Jones solo, and I'm gonna focus my energy. And I promise, if you do that, you will pick up things in that solo that you've never heard before. But the reality is we're not doing that. Now what we're doing is we're listening to his solo, and then we're like looking at a phone while we're listening.
True. You know, I know exactly what you mean.
Or we're checking emails while we're listening. And so what happens is our attention is more divided. So, and that to me is what didn't exist before. Yeah, first of all, again, man, you're asking amazing questions. There's two vantage points. The best way for drummers now to really learn the language is to go back to the beginning. I realize now that I had an unusual experience when I learned jazz. I actually was fortunate to learn from a lot of different people, but everybody kept taking me back to the beginning. You know, I didn't start. It's funny. I didn't hear a recording of Tony Williams till I was in college.
Oh, really?
The first drummer I heard was Buddy Rich. Then I heard Philly Joe Jones.
Start.
Yeah, you know. Then I heard Philly Joe Jones. Then I heard people tell me to check out Papa Joe Jones. And so everybody, when they hear me now, they say, "Man, you know, you play a lot of great modern stuff, but you have this old soul to you." And it's really because I started with the beginning. You know, I started with the guys who they were the first ones that played this music, and then as I evolved as a drummer, I then went with guys like Tony Williams, Rashid Ali, and, you know, Alphonse Mouzon, all these modern drummers. So for me, I started checking out more modern things as I grew, and that's not actually what's happening now. Is that drummers are kind of, you know, starting with Tony Williams, you know,
or Crusade.
Yeah, exactly. So I think I think that's one of the biggest issues I find. So go back to the history, and then I have to ask you to ask me the second part of that question.
Oh yeah, some advices on how to understand how to interact more properly.
Yeah, that to me is the one thing that I'm still learning. You know, you can listen to records to hear the language, to learn the language, but the way that you interact, it's like learning a real language, right? Is you gotta get in the heat of battle. So to me, you can't interact shedding by yourself. Like if I had $1 for every drummer that comes to me and says, "Man, you interact so well, how can I learn how to do it?" And I say, "Well, how much time do you spend practicing with other people?" "Oh, well, I'll tell you what I'm working on by myself." Well, that's the problem. When you practice on your own, I'll tell you, someone told me a quote. They said, you practice to alleviate the instrument as an obstacle, right? So you practice to remove the instrument as a problem. So your practice time is so that when you sit down, there's no problem playing. The interaction, that can only come from playing with other people. So you want to get better at interacting? Put yourself in situations where you're playing with new people. So I think, honestly, that's been one of my strengths. And what's helped me to work a lot is I really have a strong ability to blend with anybody. You know, like, I mean, that's something that I will never say that I'm the best drummer. I'll never say that I have the fastest hands, because I mean, there's so many great drummers I know around the world that are my friends that are great. But one thing that I do feel is my strength is that, man, you can sit me in a band with guys from Israel, you can sit me in a band with guys from Italy or guys from Florida, and I can figure out how to blend and interact with them.
I think that's because of this.
It's because of that, and also I'm open. You know, like when I come to a band, I listen in a way that I immediately pick up how, like, somebody's beat, right? Because, you know, if you're from Italy, the way that your culture is, you're gonna process time different than a guy from Israel. So for me as a drummer, I have to sit down and hear you and say, okay, he's hearing the beat this way. Let me blend with that, you know? And then if I play with a guy from Israel, I say, okay, he's hearing the beat this way. A lot of times what we do as musicians, we don't listen to each other. We come to it with like a way that we play, and then that's it. And then you know, we have the issue.
To be able to find a compromise.
Yeah, you gotta, and part of that is knowing a lot of music. You know, if you know a lot of music, then you know you have like a vocabulary. Like, you know, if you say, okay, I know from Baby Dolls to, you know, Chris Daddy Dave, and you got a lot of options.
100 years of.
Yeah, and that's essentially what I've been working on, is just building my discography and building my knowledge of music and styles of music. So I can go from very beginning New Orleans music, traditional. I can play anything from that up to, you know, Robert Glasper and whatever's current now, you know, up to pop music if I needed to, because I spent a lot of time
That's mainly what I'm trying to do too.
Yeah.
So
Yeah,
it's
and
interesting to hearing somebody like you who already has that kind of span
but I'm always learning. I'm never, you never wake up and you're like, I know 100 years of music.
True.
But you just
But I get what you mean, so it's great.
The first thing, I have to self-advertise. I have a new CD coming out in 2 weeks, I think it is, February 4th on iTunes. It's called Onward and Upward, and it features a great band. It's Ruben Rogers on bass, Anat Cohen, Gilad Hexelman, Christian Sands, a couple other special guests. So I'm really excited about that. It's for me, a really beautiful record where I really feel like I'm coming into my own. And it's kind of, one of my big drum heroes in terms of today. I love Brian Blade, and I love everything about what he does musically, especially as a leader. And so it's kind of my departure from just one style of playing to a new style of playing. And I play a lot of groove stuff on this album, and it's a side of me that a lot of people haven't really heard. So I'm really excited about that. I have another project I'm working on, specifically in the Japanese market in the summertime. It's a band called New Century Jazz, and it's kind of my take on like an Art Blakey style, kind of modern Art Blakey ensemble with some great arrangements and stuff. So that's cool, and then I'm always producing. So the biggest way to stay in touch with what I'm doing, check out my website, which is ulyssesowensjr.com. Also my production site, which is uojproductions.com. So any albums that I'm producing, that as well. So yeah, man, I'm always looking to meet great people and always collaborating. And I think for me, I just want to make better music and music that really is in touch with my heart.
Thanks a lot for taking the time of being with us today.
Thank you for having me,
It's been a pleasure, and
good
luck with everything.
Thank you, man. I'm a huge fan of the show, and I'm really, to all the watchers and viewers and listeners, check out anything and everything that he does on the show. He's a great guy. So, thanks.